The first thing I remember is the smell of dust and laundry detergent in the basement, that oddly comforting mix that clings to old cardboard and forgotten Christmas decorations. It was a Saturday, boring in that pleasant domestic way. The kind of day where the biggest item on your to do list is finally deal with that corner we keep pretending not to see. I was in leggings and an oversized t shirt, hair in a messy bun, music playing low from my phone on a shelf. Preston had gone out to run errands, groceries, picking up a package, that sort of thing. We'd kissed at the door, just like we always do, and he'd squeezed my hand and said, "Don't work too hard down there, just throw it all out." Then he'd grinned and stepped into his shoes, and I remember thinking, not for the first time, how lucky I was. After all these years, my stomach still did that stupid flutter when he smiled. Downstairs, the light was coming in through that tiny half window, slicing the dusty air into warm beams. I was kneeling on the cold concrete, sorting piles, donate, recycle, trash, the mysterious ask Preston if this is important pile. That's when I saw it. A dark duffel bag shoved behind an old shelving unit, almost swallowed by a curtain of cobwebs. It didn't look like any of our usual storage stuff. No label, no tape, just a scuffed zipper and worn handles. I tugged it out, coughing a little when the dust puffed up. It was heavier than it looked. I remember frowning, automatically checking for spiders, then unzipping it with the mindless curiosity you have when you're cleaning. I expected to find old cables or maybe tools. I did not expect what I actually found. The first thing my hand brushed was something soft and silky. I pulled it out and froze. It was a pair of black lace panties, delicate and clearly not mine. My brain tripped over itself, cataloging the size, the cut, the way the fabric slipped between my fingers. Definitely women's underwear. Definitely not something I'd ever bought. My heart did a weird little lurch, like my body couldn't decide if it was supposed to panic yet. I put them aside carefully, almost reverently, and reached in again. More lace. A satin slip, the kind that looks like it would whisper against skin. A pale pink silk dress folded neatly. A long chestnut brown wig in a hairnet. A makeup bag, heavier than it looked when I picked it up. And tucked along one side, lined up like someone had taken time to arrange them once. Several pairs of pantyhose in various shades, their plastic packaging crinkled and faded. I just stared at everything spread out in front of me on the concrete floor. The music playing from my phone suddenly sounded far away, like it was coming from another room entirely. For a long moment, the only thing I could hear was the low hum of the dehumidifier and my own heartbeat in my ears. Then I noticed something else in the bag, a smaller, zippered pouch. When I opened it and saw a couple of sex toys, I snapped it shut just as quickly, as if someone might catch me, even though I was completely alone. The first thought that flashed through my mind was primitive and sharp. Is he cheating on me? The second came right on its heels, softer but insistent. Or, is this his? I sat back on my heels and pressed my hands against my thighs, grounding myself in the coolness of the concrete through my leggings. Preston had hinted in his careful, gentle way that he was a little fluid when it came to gender and sexuality. It had never been a big sit-down revelation with dramatic music. It was just something he'd slipped into late-night conversations, little fragments like, "Sometimes I feel softer than people see me," or, "I've always liked certain fabrics more than seems normal." I'd listened, I'd nodded, I'd told him I loved him exactly as he was, and I meant it. I still do. But seeing this, seeing the physical evidence, silk and lace and pantyhose and a wig, was different than hearing the words. My stomach flipped again, but this time the feeling that followed was complicated. There was shock, yes. Surprise, absolutely. A flicker of fear that this meant something was wrong with us or with me. But threaded through all of that was something I didn't expect. A rising, insistent thrum of excitement. It was like someone had opened a door in my brain I didn't know was there. I picked up one of the pairs of pantyhose, the package yellowed around the edges, and turned it over in my hands. I imagined Preston, my broad-shouldered, gentle, goofy husband, carefully pulling them up his legs. I pictured him smoothing them over his thighs, maybe catching his reflection in a mirror, his face familiar but framed differently. The idea of his strong hands, the same ones that fixed our leaky sink and absent-mindedly traced circles on my back when we cuddled, now adjusting a delicate slip over his chest. The more I let myself imagine it, the more my initial shock melted into something warm and undeniably aroused. Heat rose in my cheeks, and I actually laughed. This slightly hysterical, slightly delighted sound that bounced off the concrete walls. Well, I said aloud, though no one was there to hear it, this is something. I sat there for a while, touching the fabrics, feeling their textures, letting my mind run wild in a way I never had when it came to men in women's clothes. I'd always been pretty live and let live about it. If it makes someone happy, who cares? But it had never crossed my mind as something that might intersect with my own life, with my relationship, with my bed. Now, though, now I pictured Preston in that pink silk, his stubble freshly shaved, his hazel eyes lined softly in brown. I pictured him sitting across from me on the couch, legs crossed, fumbling with lip gloss, both of us laughing. I pictured the two of us getting ready together, sharing the mirror, borrowing each other's eyeliner. And then, beneath all of that, there was the image of him slipping into bed beside me dressed like that, still very much himself, still the man I loved, just with another layer of him revealed. That image hit me so hard I had to close my eyes and breathe through it. This wasn't just okay to me, it was a turn on, a huge one. The nervousness about what it meant for us was still there, but it was sitting in the back seat now, overshadowed by curiosity and this deep, surprising swell of affection. This bag, with all its naughty contents, felt less like evidence of betrayal and more like proof of how long he'd been carrying this alone. And that's when something in me shifted from shock to certainty. I didn't want this to be a secret he hid in the basement anymore. I zipped the bag closed, stood up, and marched upstairs like a woman with a plan. My brain was buzzing. By the time I reached our bedroom, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I spread everything out on our bed, smoothing the dresses and slips, lining up the pantyhose and panties like I was curating a tiny boutique. I put the wig on its stand from the closet, the one I normally use for my own hairpieces, and set the makeup bag beside it, unzipped so the colors peeked out. The sex toys I left in the bag, not because I was ashamed, but because I wanted the focus to be on him first, on his comfort. When I finished, I stepped back and looked at the display. It was beautiful in a quiet, intimate way, the afternoon light sliding across silk and lace, the softness of the fabrics against our familiar comforter. It felt like an altar to a part of him that had been locked away. My phone buzzed on the dresser. A text from Preston. Heading home in 10. Do you need anything else from the store? I stared at the message for a heartbeat, then typed back, Nope, just you. Love you. I added a little heart emoji and hit send. The next 10 minutes were the longest of my life. I paced. I sat on the edge of the bed. I stood back up and rearranged the pantyhose, then scolded myself for fussing. I checked myself in the mirror and realized my cheeks were still flushed. I tried to decide what I would say. The truth is, I didn't have a speech ready. I just had this bone-deep conviction. I love this man. I want all of him, even the parts he's scared to show. I heard the front door open, keys jingling in the bowl, his familiar footsteps on the stairs. My heart climbed right up into my throat, but I didn't move. I just stood there, hands clasped in front of me, staring at the bed. Hey, babe, he called. You will not believe the line at the... He stopped in the doorway. In the mirror, I saw his reflection freeze. His eyes went wide, darting from the panties to the dresses to the wig. His grocery bag swung slightly from his hand, forgotten. For a split second, his face went pale in a way that made my chest ache. It was like watching someone realize they'd been caught standing on a trap door. He didn't say anything. I turned to face him slowly, giving myself a second to steady my voice. I walked over, took the grocery bag gently from his fingers, and set it down on the dresser. Then I stepped close enough to touch him, but I didn't. Not yet. I wanted my words to land first. Put them on, I said softly. I want to see. His mouth opened, then closed again. Color flooded back into his cheeks, but it wasn't the warm kind. It was the hot, embarrassed kind. His eyes shone in a way that made me think he might be about to cry, and for a second I worried I'd pushed too hard, too fast. But then he took a breath, long and shaky, and something in his shoulders loosened. He searched my face like he was trying to find any trace of disgust or mockery, any hint that this was some kind of cruel joke. Whatever he saw must have reassured him because his expression changed. It wasn't relief, not exactly. It was more like surrender. Cassie, he murmured, voice thick. Where did you? The basement, I said. I was cleaning. I found your bag. His gaze flicked past me again, to the bed, to the wig, to the pantyhose. I watched his jaw clench and unclench. I haven't seen that bag since before we got married, he said finally, barely above a whisper. I thought I'd lost it during the move, maybe on purpose. I reached up then and touched his cheek, my thumb brushing the roughness of his day-old stubble. Well, I said, letting a small smile curve my lips, it's found now. His eyes met mine. I let him see everything there, the love, the curiosity, the desire, and maybe most importantly, the absolute lack of judgment. I want to see you, I said again. All of you, not just the parts you think are acceptable. If this is part of you, I want it. Please, put them on, Preston. There was a long pause where I felt the whole world narrow down to the space between us. Then, very slowly, he nodded. Okay, he said. He started unbuttoning his shirt with shaky hands. I stepped back and gave him space, but I stayed close enough that he knew I wasn't leaving. I watched as he took off his clothes, the ones I was used to seeing in a pile on his side of the bed, and crossed the room to the delicate things laid out in their place. He picked up a pair of pantyhose, the same black ones I'd touched downstairs, and sat on the edge of the bed. There was reverence in the way he rolled them carefully, sliding them over his toes, then up his calves, his thighs. He moved slowly, both because he was nervous and because he was savoring it, I could tell. This wasn't new to him, even if it was new to me. His fingers knew the motions. Then came the panties, the soft slip of silk, the dress. Watching him transform piece by piece was, I don't even know if I have the right words for it. It was like seeing layers peel away, but also like seeing new ones added, delicate and shimmering. It was him and not him, all at once. When he stood to pull the dress into place, it hit me again how beautiful he is. Broad shoulders, strong arms, but now draped in pink silk that hugged his torso and fell around his hips. The pantyhose gave his legs this elegant smoothness, and the way he looked down at himself, half terrified, half awed, made something inside me twist and ache. Come here, I said softly when he hesitated in front of the mirror, clearly too overwhelmed to move on his own. He shuffled over, the unfamiliar feel of the pantyhose making his movements a little careful. I led him to the vanity and guided him into the chair. When I reached for the wig, his hand shot out and grabbed mine. You don't have to, he said quickly. We can stop here. I don't want you to do anything you're not comfortable with. I know this is a lot. I laughed then, a warm, incredulous sound, and leaned down to kiss his forehead. Preston, I murmured, you have no idea how much I want this right now. His eyes widened a little, and some of the fear in them finally melted into something softer, hopeful. I settled the wig carefully over his head, adjusting it so the chestnut waves framed his face. Then I opened the makeup bag. It was well stocked, clearly curated with intention, neutral eyeshadows, a couple of lipsticks, a modest blush. I realized with a pang that I could have had this experience with him sooner if only he'd felt safe enough to share it. As I worked, the room grew quiet. The world shrank down to tiny details, the way his lashes trembled when I asked him to look up, the hitch in his breath when I brushed a thumb across his cheekbone to blend foundation, the small smile that kept trying to sneak onto his lips every time I stepped back to admire my work. There, I said finally, leaning back to look at him in the mirror. What do you think? He stared at his reflection like he was seeing a ghost he'd once loved and thought he'd lost. His eyes were a little shinier, his lips slightly parted, the gloss catching the light. The dress, the wig, the makeup, They didn't erase the man I knew. They just shifted the way he occupied his own body, softer, but still very much him. He swallowed hard. I haven't seen myself like this in years. Do you like what you see? I asked, my voice gentle. He hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, he said, and his voice cracked on the word. Yeah, I do. I met his eyes in the mirror. Me too, I said. I like it a lot. The air between us changed then, thickening with something electric but still tender. I put the makeup down, slid my arms around his shoulders from behind, and rested my cheek against his wig-covered hair. His hands came up to cover mine, fingers lacing through, and our eyes met again in the mirror. Preston, I said quietly, I meant what I said. We are going to be seeing a lot more of this bag. Of you, like this, if you want that. He let out a low, disbelieving laugh that sounded dangerously close to a sob. You're serious, he said. Dead serious, I replied. I squeezed his hands. This doesn't scare me. It doesn't make me love you less. It doesn't make you less of a man to me. It just makes you more you. And I am so, so into that. He turned in the chair then, and I stepped back as he stood. We faced each other in the soft bedroom light, me in my paint-splattered t-shirt, him in silk and lace and a shaky kind of bravery. For a moment, everything was silent. Then he cupped my face, careful of his painted nails, and kissed me. It was different and exactly the same all at once. His mouth was still his mouth, familiar and warm and slightly tentative at first. But there was something new in the way his body pressed against mine. The fabric of the dress whispering against my skin, the slight scent of the foundation I'd just applied, mixing with his usual soap and cologne. My hands slid down his sides, feeling the slickness of the silk, then lower to where the pantyhose hugged his hips. We didn't rush anything. We didn't need to. The rest of that evening is ours, private and sacred, but I will say this. It was the most passionate, intimate, connected we'd felt in a very long time. Not because of the clothes themselves exactly, but because of what they represented. He was letting me see him, all of him, and I was meeting him there with open arms. Afterward, we lay tangled together, his wig slightly askew, traces of lipstick on my neck. We were both laughing quietly, that soft, disbelieving laughter people have when they've just stepped over a line they thought they'd never cross and found something beautiful on the other side. So, I said, running a finger along the edge of his wig cap, this bag has been in your life for how long? His cheeks pinked under the makeup. Since my late 20s, he admitted, on and off. I'd purge it, then rebuild it. You know, the whole cycle of shame thing, I never thought I'd have it all out on the bed like a fashion show. Well, I replied, tracing slow, lazy circles on his chest. Consider the cycle officially broken. He turned his head to look at me, searching my face again. Old habits die hard. You're sure? He asked. This isn't just a one-time, heat-of-the-moment thing for you? I laughed softly. Preston, I've been thinking about you in pantyhose for the last 6 hours. I am very, very sure. He groaned and covered his face with his hands, but he was smiling. God, I love you, he said through his fingers. Good, I replied, prying his hands away so I could kiss his knuckles. Because I love you, all versions of you, always. That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, things have evolved. The bag no longer lives in the basement. It has an entire drawer now, actually 2, in our shared dresser. His dresses hang beside my own, his wig's on stands next to my hair extensions. Our shoes have started to mingle in a way that's a little dangerous for my closet space, but frankly, it's worth it. Some nights, I'll come home from work and find him already dressed when I walk in, maybe in a soft blue dress or a silky slip peeking out from under an oversized cardigan. He'll be cooking dinner, humming along to some podcast, bare feet and pantyhose on the kitchen tile. The first time that happened, I just stood in the doorway and watched him for a full minute, feeling that same swell of affection and desire crash over me in a now familiar wave. Other times, it's more deliberate. I'll pull out a pair of pantyhose and toss them in his lap while we're watching TV. He'll raise an eyebrow and I'll just smile and say, "Girls' night?" Then we'll both disappear into the bedroom and reemerge half an hour later, transformed. Me in one of my favorite dresses, him in one of his. Both of us in heels will regret by the end of the night. We've started having what we jokingly call girls' time, where the goal isn't intimacy in the physical sense, but connection. We'll do each other's makeup. He's getting scarily good at eyeliner, by the way. We'll sip wine, sit cross legged on the couch, and talk about everything under the sun. His childhood, the first time he ever tried on pantyhose and what it felt like, my own hidden fantasies I've never said out loud, the way gender feels more like a color gradient than a box to him. And yeah, sometimes the clothes come off after only a few minutes. Sometimes the soft brush of silk against skin, the sight of my very masculine husband looking so gorgeously feminine, is enough to light us both up like a match head. But it's not just about that. It's about the permission we've given each other to be weird and honest and wholehearted. I've discovered that the biggest turn on for me isn't the dresses or the pantyhose themselves. It's the vulnerability. It's the trust. It's the sight of Preston standing in front of me in a slip and stockings, shoulders bare, eyes open, saying without words, "This is me. Do you still want me?" And getting to answer, every single time, more than ever. Our relationship, which I already thought was rock solid, feels deeper now. Like we were living in a spacious, beautiful house, and suddenly we found a hidden wing with a sunroom and a library and a secret door. We didn't move into a different house, we just opened more doors. If you're watching this and wondering what the lesson is, I guess it's this: be honest with your partner, with yourself. The parts of you that you've convinced yourself are too weird, too shameful, too out there to share. Those might be the parts that bring you closer than you've ever been. Preston was the most trustworthy, honest, good-natured man I'd ever met long before I found that bag in the basement. This didn't change that. If anything, it revealed just how much trust he'd been placing in me, even silently, by staying with me while this whole world of his stayed hidden. Now he doesn't have to hide it anymore. And I get the immense privilege of seeing him, really seeing him, in dresses, in jeans, in pantyhose, in boxers, in all the ways he walks through the world. 3 weeks ago, I thought I was just cleaning the basement. Now I look at our life and realize I was dusting off a part of our future I didn't know we had. And I'm so, so glad I opened that bag.